get punched up.
Hi everyone, today's episode of talking about Cube or Cube Talk or whatever you want to call these segments that I've been doing recently, I'm going to be discussing some cards that are in my Cube that maybe shouldn't be there, but I think they should. Players have a lot of fun with them. I don't see these cards typically in a lot of cubes, so I'm going to give them a kind of rundown, maybe defend them a little bit as to why they're there. First off, I want to talk about these three guys. You got a new edition, Felden of the Third Path. You got the old Preacher, and the even older Old Man of the Sea. Now, the function that these three guys serve in my cube is basically they're not too intensive a mana cost at 3 apiece, and they can single-handedly run away with a game. I personally witnessed Preacher just the other day do exactly that. If you can't kill this guy, he's just going to take a creature. Sure, they get to choose, but then you can block with that creature or whatever and get another one. Or if you're playing against, say, Control and they only really have one good creature a lot of the time, you can get their Consecrated Sphinx or their Una or whatever it is that they're using as their kill card. Preacher can take that for you, and typically people are kind of mad about using premium removal on this old dude, but you know, sometimes you just have to do that. Plus, drawn by Quentin Hoover, who I knew personally. He's a good guy from the Oklahoma area. Recently passed away, unfortunately, but I don't think this card will ever come out of Cube. Felden, new card, relatively. Been doing great. He's outside of the color pie a little bit for red. Does things that red normally doesn't do. He helps support the sneak attack decks in red, and just gives you another angle, maybe a black-red reanimator style decks are starting to become more of a thing, and loving that. And again, he can just run away with the game. You can make worm coils every turn or something retarded like that, and guess what? If you don't deal with him, you'll win. This guy may be the weakest of the three. He can only take creatures power 2 or less, of which there are a lot of great ones in the cube. You can give him pants and make him a little better. Of course, the argument there, if you give him pants, he's just all around better, so why aren't you swinging with him? But he's still pretty good at 3 for a 2/3, and he's gotten a little bit better because recently Devotion has become a thing in the cube, so Blue Devotion is something, and this guy acts toward that and can still steal things by tapping. So that's my defense on those 3 picks. Here's a relatively weird one that I put in mostly as a joke because I had this cool looking foil one, and it's turned out to be really freaking good. I support tokens in my cube, and if you're in the black-white token deck, this card is invaluable. It makes everything threatening both attacking and defensively, and you can pull yourself out of holes with the lifelink as well. It's a really great card. I really didn't expect much to come from it. As I said, it was a joke, but I don't think it's ever leaving, or at least not anytime soon, as long as tokens are a thing. Here's one. I do play all of them. I just didn't bother pulling them out. We used to call these coupon lands back in the day before actual fetches, and what they are coming to play tapped fetches, and they function virtually the same way, except they come into play tap, but they do bring the basic land, or not basic, but typically a dual land or a shock land untapped if you want. So they're not quite as good, but they move towards delve. They put lands in the graveyard for things like Life and Loam and etc. They help with making your deck more streamlined. So I like them. They've been running pretty good. They were slow to adopt, but people started using them more and more. So here's one you don't see in a lot of lists. Maybe it's because it's cost prohibitive. The Abyss. Some people would say this should only go in if you have like a heavy artifact theme, but this card is just great regardless. You're probably running Cure the Glass Spinner. That and this card combo well together because this actually targets. It also is good against things with Shroud. So if you have like a Convertible Turtle as your only creature or whatever, there's not many Shroud creatures, but it's just case in point. Or if you do happen to get those artifact creatures, your Wormcoil Engine, your Scuttling Doom Engine, or your Triskelion, or whatever it may be, this card is great. I've got a lot of great stories with this card, and I don't see it coming out anytime soon. Here's another one that I don't see a lot of love for, Black Sun Zenith. A lot of people are talking about putting Crux of Fate in their cubes recently. Um, okay, it's at 5, I understand it's another damnation, kind of. Well, so is this, and in a 40 card environment, and you've already drawn, probably 10 cards at this point, this goes back in your deck, and you're going to get it again if you have one of those grindy, maybe black control decks or whatever. You can see this 2, sometimes even 3 times in a match. And it functions virtually the same way. It keeps you alive early, later on maybe it kills something big, and it does have the added bonus of if you have the biggest creature on board, it may remain in play at the end of it. Sure, it might be a 2/2 or whatever, but it's still standing. So, love this card again. I don't see why people don't play it. Here's some I run that a lot don't in the way of equipment. I've got Mortar Pod. You see this fairly frequently, but not in all cubes. And here's 2 you almost never see. Trusty Machete or Trusty Mahete. Mahete. And Haunted Plate Mail. What I was wanting to do was, a lot of time people would complain they weren't getting equipment. They'd get the Stoneforge Mystic, for instance, and then not get an equipment to go with it. Or people just really wanted equipment, period. So, all these have been running really good. Surprisingly, even the Machete, which is basically an inferior, oh god, I can't even think of the name of the card, Dark Steel Axe? No, that's not it. You guys will know what I'm talking about. I can't think of the card name right now, but we all know you're probably screaming at your screen as to what the card is, but we all know the card I'm talking about. It is in the cube as well, and this is just like an inferior one because it actually costs 2 to equip. But it's still quite good because I also run Trinket Mage, and this is just one casting cost artifact that you can search up with that, and it's still really good in the aggressive decks. Mortar Pod is a great hedge against the aggressive decks if you're in more of a mid-range, or if you're an aggressive deck yourself, or the tokens deck, it's perfect. And this card is surprisingly good too. I originally only was testing it out again, it's just, this might be neat, but it's been working out surprisingly well, so no time soon will that be coming out. Here's one that might be coming out relatively soon. That's good old Penis Tower, or Ivory Tower. I see this getting run, but less and less as time goes on. It definitely goes with Necropotence, and is good with that card, but outside of that, it's like typically a bad healing salve. It's not something you want to draw late. Probably going to come out of my cube relatively soon, but for now it's still there. It is another target for not Treasure Mage, Trinket Mage. Yeah, Trinket Mage. I think I may have said Tinker Mage earlier, but I worked a long shift tonight, guys. Give me some slack. Here's one I almost never see in cubes, which is surprising. Jinxed Idol. It's great in the aggressive decks. I recently put it back in and thought, well, we'll give it a chance now that tokens are more heavily supported in my cube. And I was immediately handed this off of a Goblin Rabble Master token, and I quickly realized I was going to be taking 2 each turn no matter what I did. Still, it's a great card. 2 for 2 damage every turn that you virtually do nothing about in the right deck is great, and you should give it a try. Scuttling Doom Engine. This guy's been surprisingly good. Again, I put him in more or less just to try him out, and he's just not come out, and I ended up foiling him out because he's so good. You can't chump this guy, which is actually very relevant, and if you get this and Reoccurring Nightmare, good God. Just ridiculous things happen, but also quite good as just a tinker target. There's not a whole lot of like great tinker targets in my cube. I've actually stayed away from your like one-shot robot and stuff like that because the feel bads. I also don't run Emrakul or any of the Eldrazi. Here's Icy Manipulator. This one's from back in the day. It was one of the best cards ever, and I don't think people give it the respect it deserves. It can solve a lot of problems for you or cause a lot of problems for your opponent. If they're off to a slow start, you can tap their only source of one type of mana, much like a Rishadan Port. Heaven forbid you get this and Rishadan Port. It can shut down their biggest threat until you get a Wrath or whatever and Wrath away the board, and then when they do get another threat, it's there waiting to shut that thing down too. So give this some respect, you whippersnappers, and try it out. It's actually pretty good. Now, here's something I've noticed in recent times. A lot of people have cut their swords down to just Feast or Famine and Fire and Ice. I still run all 5 and defend that not only because they look sweet, but because people love swords, man. And like I said earlier, I'm struggling to get equipment for people that want to actually play. And there is an argument to be made that, body and mind is entirely too powerful in Cube, and I've seen that actually firsthand. You get this on a True Name Nemesis or something like that. Pretty ridiculous. But I also just run a ridiculous amount of artifact removal in Cube. I didn't pull it all out, but it is ridiculous. I run an overabundance because I want people to be able to answer problems of this nature, and I don't think swords are ever going to come out. I like running all 5. I understand the argument of only running 2 or 3 or what have you, but people just love them, man. And as long as people are having fun with them, that's defense enough to leave a card in my opinion. Here's a fun one. Who, what, when, where, and why. Originally, again, put in more as a joke than a serious card, but this card does work, man. None of the modes on it are particularly powerful. Destroy an artifact, counter a creature spell, destroy a land, gain life, probably the worst of the modes, and destroy an enchantment. But if you're in the 5-color good stuff deck, all of a sudden you have a card that can just do all kinds of stuff. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife of a card. And I love it. New players, when they come playing my cube, they always kind of giggle over it when they say, "Are you serious?" And yeah, I'm serious. It's good. Here's one that's great. Gannick Teague, or Sean Connery, as we used to call him.
Not so fast, Trebek. I really thought that was going to work. You were wrong, you Montebank. I pose a conundrum to you. A riddle, if you will.
I don't want to hear it.
What's the difference between you and a mallard with a cold? One's a sick duck. I can't remember how it ends, but your mother's a whore.
Should have put him in the nickname cards, but didn't. A lot of cubes don't run this, and I understand why, because green-white's incredibly hard to get into. It's probably the hardest color combination to actually break into, but man, I just love this guy. If you're in the white-green aggressive deck, it basically tells them you can't wrath until you deal with me, man. And I don't know, man. I love this guy. He's so good. He shuts down so many strategies that he's just remained in. And again, I don't think he's ever coming out. I just love this guy. And here's another one that's probably a personal favorite. I should probably update and take out, but look how sweet that looks foil. Oh my god. It's, just the old Wall of Denial. It just sits there and it flies and you can't target the damn thing. And it effectively takes out whatever their best creature is 9 times out of 10. Sure, there are some cards that are bigger than 0-8, or 8 power rather, but most of them can't get past this guy, and that is tremendous. Here's Double Dragon. He's one of the few 3-colored cards in my cube. I don't know what to say. It's 6 for 8 power in the air. It does ridiculous things with blink effects. Granted, you're going to be in 4 colors if you do that, but still, I've seen it happen, man. This thing is ridiculous under a Mimic Vat. It's a good reanimator target. And it's just a good card. Give it a try. Here's one you should not try. I got convinced by my cousin about a year and a half ago to put in Xenagod, and somehow it's still in my cube. I'm actually, after this video, I didn't even realize it was still in the cube. Kind of sad. But after this video, I'm going to try and figure out how to get this guy out of there. I really regret paying the amount I paid for it, and I really don't want to tell you guys how much. But he has done nothing in cube. I've never seen him played. He probably gets last picked. Ugh. Here's one I will defend. And the last card that I'll be talking about, Mirari's Wake. This card was ridiculous back in the day, and it's lost a little bit of its power, but it's still really good. It's fine in your token-based decks. It's really good in your decks where you're trying to, if you can ramp into this, say the 4th turn or the 3rd turn, heaven forbid, If you get this out, then the next turn you can cast virtually anything in the cube. Multiple things, things with X in their cost. Just good stuff happens after this card resolves. Don't believe me? Give it a shot. It may one day come out of the cube because, as I said, green-white really hard to break into. In fact, currently I'm kind of bending the rules on green-white a little bit. I have, I believe, 7 green-white cards, and I'm justifying it by saying a couple of them are more this color, more that, whatever. But yeah, give this card a try. It will do some work for you. And as always, thanks for watching.